All right. Well, good morning. So we got together to talk about what we'd like to do for Father's Day, and we kind of thought, let's change it up a little bit. So we have invited, it was originally 4, but there's been a bonus, as you can see, with Dustin. So we have technically 5 panelists up here today. We're going to talk a little bit about our fathers and maybe some of the fun experiences, maybe some funny stories, maybe some more endearing things about our dads. And so we thought, what better way than to hear from some of our people here at Living Waters to talk about their fathers and get to share a little bit about their experiences growing up, and then also maybe serving in that role as well. One of the things about fathers is that they can look a lot of different ways, right? And one of the things that, we recognize Carol again this morning for Joel and, starting this church in his role as our lead pastor for many, many years. And, for a lot of people, Joel was a spiritual father. And, we want to recognize and continue to honor him for what he had done in serving so well and serving this congregation so well. And so I wanted that to be an encouragement to you as people here today, hearing that whether you have kids of your own or not, you can still serve in that role as a father in a spiritual way, to come alongside people and guide and help them walk through life by leading an example of what Jesus wants us to do. Amen? All right, so, I'm getting a little loud here. Well, I'm going to go ahead. My name is Stephen Whitehead, for you guys who don't know. So I'm going to help lead our panel, and I'm going to let everybody kind of introduce themselves. So, to my right.
My name is David Eaton, and my wife and Donna and I came to this church when it started back in 1981. We came with Brother Joel and Carol from Grafenberg United Methodist Church, and so it's been a privilege to be a member of this church since the inception of it. And this first question was, tell us about our family. I said Donna and I have been married for 43 years, and we have 2 children, Carol and Matthew, and we're not sure, we know Matthew is one of the first children born in this church. We're not sure if he was the first one, because he was born in September of 1981. Since then, we now have 7 grandchildren. Carol has 1, Matthew has 6, all right? And that's why we were not at church last Sunday, because I got a call at 5:30 in the morning, Dad, the baby's on the way. And so we had to watch the other grandkids while Ariella Casey Eaton was born last Sunday. So that's why we weren't here. So in terms of the rest of my family, my mother is still alive. She's 85 years old. She lives here in Shelby County. I'm originally from Louisville, Dixie Highway area, so I've been bringing all my family out here with me as we come along, because there's no place better than Shelby County. And I have 3 brothers and 1 sister, and I was the oldest in my family. Now, in terms of my dad was born in 1923, so I grew up in a different generation. I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, and in the 50s and the 60s, we had rotary phones. There was no push-button phones. Some of you might remember that still. And, we all sat down at the dinner table every night and had dinner together. That was family time. And we had black and white TVs, and I was the remote control. Dad wanted the station changed. David, go change station. But we only had 4 stations. That was it. It was not like it was today. And, my dad and my mom both loved to listen to music. Y'all may not know this name, but their favorite singer was a guy by the name of Johnny Mathis. And so we'd listen to Johnny Mathis on the turntable a whole lot. And then finally, we didn't go to the barber shop. My dad gave haircuts. We all had buzzes, and I had many of sunburned head over the summertime. So when I got older, I made sure my hair was long enough to protect myself in the future, although it's starting to thin out now. But so I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about my father for the rest of this time.
Well, my name is Leanne Jesse, and my dad is Gary Onan, sitting right over there. You wave. Yeah. And of course, my mom, Donna, and Andrea sitting there. Then I have a brother, Alex, who they live in Louisville, go to church at Sojourn. And then my husband sitting back there, Dan, Jesse. And then I have two boys. They're not here today. They're word travelers and have a better life than we do right now. So Doug is 18, just turned 18. And then Jack is going to be 16 in August. So I'm going to have a senior and a sophomore next year, which will be fun. I started out here at Living Waters when I was in 8th grade. We moved from Louisville to here, and it was pretty a rude awakening because we also went to Living Waters, which had 30 students. So, then, I don't know, we've been here ever since. We've moved, Dan and I moved to Texas we were there for a while and then came back. And so this has been a great place to raise our family, and they have wonderful grandparents here, the boys do, that love them. So that's about it.
Excellent. Moving on.
David Rock. My kids, they have a better life as well. They're in the car now on their way to the Jersey Shore and going to spend the week with my dad and mom, and they get some one-on-one time. That's the two oldest kids, Isaiah and Ella. We call them the bigs, and then we call the other ones the littles because they're kind of grouped together that way. So the bigs are on their way to the shore, and the littles are here with us, and they're outside playing today. I actually was grafted in here at Living Waters in 2001 when I graduated from Elam Bible Institute, came and served as youth pastor for 9 years. And that's where I met my wife. Jessica was here, and they say the rest is history. So I'm glad to be here today.
My name is Dustin Casey, and I am father to Ezra, 19 months, and little daughter, 6 months. I've got beautiful bride, Erica, and we've been members here at the church for a little over a year. I said that the Lord came and found me, and I started looking for a home, and this is where I had to look to. My stepfather and mother, they met here when I was just a little baby, and it was the church home that I remembered as a child. So I came back, and we've settled in here and are very happy to be here. I play as many hands as I can as far as what my family looked like. I did have a stepfather, and I had my biological father, and on one side, I was the oldest of the kids. I have a stepbrother and stepsister where I'm the youngest. So I argue with my wife that makes me a middle child. She said it doesn't count, but I say I'm a middle child too, oldest and youngest, every way I can play it.
Good. Excellent. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to run through some rapid fire questions, and then we're going to kind of talk a little bit more in depth and let them kind of maybe go into a little bit more detail about some of their experiences growing up. So we're going to start with the rapid fire. So this will be kind of more quick, maybe one word or one sentence, but if we need to expound on some things, we might do that. So my dad's favorite food that you remember growing up was?
I still can't get over this. Peanut butter and Hershey bar sandwich.
Mutton barbecue, and it still is.
My dad's favorite food is coffee. Doesn't that count, doesn't it?
It does. It does, certainly.
Quick and easy, which translate to microwavable chicken.
Good. My dad's favorite TV show growing up was?
The Fugitive.
Probably UK basketball or golf.
The A-Team. That's because I like it.
This Old House.
This old house. Okay. If my dad went on vacation, he would go to where or do what? What would he do?
We never went on a vacation. But with 5 kids, I'd imagine he could go anywhere, just get a few days away. So
Jeep riding in the mountains.
The Jersey Shore.
He would go to Hawaii.
Excellent. If I brought an F home on my report card, my dad would what?
First, I never did. All right. But second, I'd be hiding someplace. I can tell you.
I think I probably did in middle school, and it was math, and he tutored me for 3 hours after that until I started crying, and Mom told him to stop.
This is hypothetical, right? we would have a conversation at the kitchen table, for sure.
Okay.
If I brought an F home, my dad probably wouldn't have known about it.
All right, so we're going to go even deeper into some of your dad's psyche. If you find that the toilet is broken in your home and is not working anymore, what is your dad's go-to response to that situation?
Well, this was an easy one. My dad was a carpenter, so he would just fix it.
Yeah, fix it.
He had those little like Home Depot books. This is, like before like internet, type stuff. He would fix it, but he would go to those books first.
Got it.
He'd want to know who did it. It might have been him, but he would fix it.
All right, if my dad was a professional athlete, he would want to be what?
Okay, I got a story behind this one.
Okay.
My dad would have been a boxer, and he was very involved in the boxing industry when he was younger. In fact, he started a boxing center in Louisville, Kentucky called the Dunbar Boxing Center. And he actually trained his children, and I'm a lover, not a fighter, okay? But he trained his children to box, and 2 times I appeared on a TV show called Tomorrow's Champions with Ed Calais. And some of the older people here may know that. But also my father served as a cornerman for a young boxer in his amateur days, and his name was Cassius Clay, who later became Muhammad Ali.
Wow. That's
That's
impressive.
hard to beat. That's hard to beat.
I'd say a golfer.
Hockey player. It's all downhill.
My dad would be a football player.
Football. Okay. See, there's some diversity there. The Cassius Clay story is going to be a hard one to top, that's for sure. You asked to borrow the car for a night out with your friends in high school. How does your dad respond?
No, we only had one car.
Absolutely.
He'd throw me the keys and say, "Here you go."
He would say, you got to get your own.
All right. So, Dave, this one will lead back to one of your responses. How does your dad take his coffee?
Black. That's just black.
Just black.
Decaf, honey, and cream.
Sugar and cream.
One pot at a time.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. All right. So we're going to move into a little bit more to let you guys kind of talk a little bit more openly about some of these questions. So I want to ask, what are 3 words you would use to describe your father, and maybe why you would maybe use those?
Okay, there's a little story behind this. As I told you, my father was a carpenter. That was his trade. He would, and a friend of his would purchase a house that had been dilapidated. They would refurbish it and then sell it. So that's the business that he was in. And unfortunately, very early into that business, my dad got very, very ill, required some surgeries and things of that nature, and as a result, he could not be a carpenter anymore because the surgeries took away his abilities to do those things. So he ended up in his lifetime working as a manager for a service station, and he hated it. He hated it, but he still did it. And I learned so much from him from that because he taught me about what it was to be dependable. He taught me what hard working meant, because he literally worked 70 hours a week. I mean, he worked 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. Sometimes he would literally go months and months without a day off. But he was determined he was going to take care of his family. And so he taught me that, and he also taught me what commitment really meant. Because once you make a commitment to do something, you honor that. So that's three words that I would use to describe my father is he was dependable, he was incredibly hardworking, and he was committed.
Dad is very patient. Being in a family with two girls and wife, I'm sure patience was needed quite frequently to all our craziness. He's patient when he fixes things, too. He doesn't just run out and buy something to replace it. He's definitely loyal to our family, and he's extremely giving. He has always been a giver. He gives with the things that he owns, tractors, I don't know, just anything that somebody needs to borrow, he would have it to give and wouldn't even think twice about giving it to lend it. A lot of times he would lend our cars, sometimes not to my mom's happiness, because they might break down on the side of the road or run out of gas right after we got them. But he really has always blessed people with being so generous and giving.
I'd say the three words that would describe my dad. One, first thing I thought of is humble. My dad was always a humble guy, never boasting in himself or being prideful. Just in growing up, a very humble guy. I would also say that he was and is loving. Even as a son today, as I met him yesterday and dropped off the kids in West Virginia and headed back home, he grabbed me and gave me a hug and a kiss. So even at 40, still a loving dad, and a hard worker. Worked to help support the family and was very dedicated to that and still is.
I would say that I could describe my dad as hardworking too. I've always said my grandpa is one of the hardest working men that I know, and my dad is second. And he is really set an example to me and showed me that there's benefit and gain to just being hardworking. He's very diligent in that. He's also thoughtful. My dad is the most thoughtful gift giver that I know. When it comes to the holiday times or in the birthday times, his gifts are not just something that are picked up at the store and wrapped up in a box. There's something every time it comes with just genuine thought that he put into the gifts, and I've always seen that in my dad. And thirdly, I would describe him as organized. If you looked at his garage, you would probably describe him as organized too. It's some people maybe say a little OCD or something. He's just organized. Living in the house with him, I think he wished I was a little bit more organized. I'm still working on that. I have a good example, but those are the three: thoughtful, hardworking, organized.
Excellent. Well, for the sake of time, I'm going to give you guys an option between number 2 and 3 that I had sent you. So the question number 2 was, what is one thing you feel everyone should know about your dad, but few probably do? Or number 3, is there a special event or activity or funny story about your dad that you remember fondly? So pick between one of those two that you'd like to answer.
I'm going to tell you a story about my father in terms of, my dad was the disciplinarian in the family. If we came home, of course my mom stayed at home, and we did something wrong, wait till I tell you, Dad. You heard that kind of language. And so we had a godly fear of our father, which is a good thing. And but beside that, he had his other side where he just cared deeply for his children and would do almost anything for them, because he loved them. And one thing that happened to me, and this is when I was about 10 years old, so this was 55 years ago, but I've never forgotten it. For my birthday, I had gotten a Batman kite. Now, in those days, and we made our own kites, we put newspaper and wrapped around it, but Dad went out and bought me a Batman kite, and it was plastic, and I wanted to go out and fly that thing, and my dad said, don't do it, don't do it. There's a storm coming in. And of course, in my way of thinking, well, if there's a storm coming, there's going to be plenty of wind. And so I didn't listen. and I did it, and the wind caught that kite and crashed it into the house, wrapped it around some of the stuff that was up on the house and stuff. And so my brand new Batman kite was sitting on the roof getting destroyed by the wind. And by then it started pouring rain, and I'll never forget, he got up on a ladder in the pouring rain, pelting on him, and he got that kite from me. He wanted to make sure that I didn't lose my kite. Now, I did lose it for 2 weeks, but I still have my kite that I could still fly, and I've never forgotten that because, when you deal with the disciplinarian side of your father, but then you see the caring side and the steps that they'll take and the things that they'll do to go over and beyond to take care of their children, you just don't forget that. And that's a memory I'll never forget as long as the Lord lets me live.
Okay, well, mine's pretty funny, I think, and don't judge him.
Gary, that doesn't sound good.
I'm nervous.
He had an interesting childhood and teenage life, and he typically, we sit around a lot of times, and he shares pretty funny stories of what they did to have fun. I believe it was because they were so poor, didn't have TV, they had to break the law to have fun. And that happened quite a lot. And they lived in a small town called Cordon, Kentucky, not Cordon, Indiana, but Western Kentucky there. And I guess there just wasn't a lot to do. And I don't know about his age, maybe high school or college age. But the county fair was going on, and he thought, maybe I could enter the fair. There's a cash prize for entering something. And so he and his buddies went around, drove around the farms, tobacco farms, to try to find the best tobacco plant that they could take and enter into the farm, or the fair. And so they had to do this, precariously, and probably, I think, at night with lights set up and things. And so they went around and they found the best one, carefully cut it down, put it in the truck, and then entered it in the county fair, and it won first place. And he got the cash, and it was all motivation for cash prize, So, and I have many more stories about that. You'll have to sit around at our dinner table one day.
I'm going to answer the question about what you might not know about my dad. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll go through the old pictures of my dad and bring those out to the kids and say, where's Pop-Up? And they're like, I don't know. Where is Pop-Up? I'll say, you see that guy with the long hair? That's Pop-Up. So my dad, he was a hippie and had long hair and played guitar, and he grew up in a home where he wasn't a Christian, and he wanted to be a musician. He wanted to play guitar. He saw pretty much all the bands of the late 60s, early 70s, the Allman Brothers and Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix, and that's what he wanted to do. And so it was in the 70s where he met my mom, and he was radically saved. It was during the Jesus movement, and he was radically saved. His life changed and turned around. He was a smoker, and the Lord delivered him from smoking overnight, just like that. He tells a story where he actually tried to smoke after it, and he couldn't stand it, and had to put him out, and never smoked a cigarette again. So he was radically saved. His life changed and turned around. At age 21, he married my mom, who was previously married and had 3 kids. So at 21, married 3 stepkids, and then had me by 22. So at 22, had 4 kids, and he sold one of his Les Pauls, his electric guitars, when I was born, and used that, went to technical school, and worked since then in computers and computer technology, and started put his dream aside of playing electric guitar in a band on stage, and went to church and became an elder in the church and led worship, and has been working in IT ever since. So just to see the transformation in his life and the responsibility that he took, I think of being 22 years old with 4 kids, is a tremendous responsibility.
Something that folks wouldn't know about my dad, and I think he tries to keep this fact quiet too, is he's a very good mechanic. He was trained and schooled in being a mechanic, and has really been able to help the whole family every time that there's a car issue, and helped me because I've had a whole bunch of junker cars, and we have spent time together working on them, and that's always been good. And something else is that he's a talented musician. He can play guitar. You won't ever catch him because I think he only plays when nobody else is in the house. I've caught him a few times, and he can sing too, but he wouldn't ever want anybody to know that. He just keeps that to himself.
Well, I have quite a few other questions I would love to get to, but I want to make sure that we have enough time to finish up with the rest of our morning. So I want to close with one more question, and really wanted to see maybe a combination of number 4 and number 6 that I'd sent you guys about the positive example your father had set for you growing up. Some of that we've already heard, but as you have your own kids, David, you have grandchildren, what is it that you learned from your dad through those positive experiences that you want to pass on, that you feel like really rise to the top, that you feel like if there's 1 or 2 things that I need to help transfer from my father to my kids, what does that look like?
One thing that my father really pushed on us when we were kids was respect, courtesy, and manners. It didn't matter how you grew up, whether you were rich or poor, it just didn't matter. Is that those were 3 things that he always pushed us to make sure that we did, and we better do it too. To this day, I say yes ma'am, no ma'am to people, and it's just how we were, and that's how we talk to our grandchildren as well. This is how you treat people with respect. If we were ever to walk into a house and we didn't open the door for our mother, we heard about it very quickly. Ladies first. It was always. We opened the car door for her. I mean, to this day, if we sit down someplace, I pull the chair out for my mother. Those were things that were ingrained in us, and that's how I am still today. I still have people come up to me and says, "David, you're the same age I am. You don't have to say yes, sir, to me." I can't help it. I mean, that was just such a part of how we were raised. And even to the lady across the street from us that towed on us all the time, I still had to say, "Yes, ma'am, Miss Murphy." That's just how it was, though. And so we try to ingrain that in our children as well, and we try to do with our grandchildren as well. Is you respect other people, you treat them with courtesy, with dignity, and that's one thing that I got from my father that is a part of me now. I hope part of my son and my daughter, and will be a part of our grandchildren as well, as they see that as respect for others.
Well, I mentioned giving and generous. I think he just has always been this way. And one time we were at it was like a homecoming with a church in Louisville, Farmdale Baptist Church, that we had basically been raised in at the beginning. And I remember this guy came up to me, and I think I was probably maybe a freshman or something, and he said he was just complimenting about my dad and what a giving man he was. and shared, I think he has given your college fund away to our building fund. And I'm like, okay, and that's wonderful, And I remember going home and saying, we still got a college fund going on here, Dad. And he assured me that everything would be fine. And I know that he did that on so many occasions, and that spoke volumes to me, to be generous and not hold on to things. He has never really done that. He has lived every day just with joy and not really hoarding things ever. And I guess that would also, number six about something that I want to pass on to my children, is with that we took great vacations of just being together and unwinding together, and I don't remember presents necessarily or fun things we did. I remember that those vacations that we would just unwind and be totally with each other all the time. So, and that's one thing I think is very, very important, just to be together like that. So I appreciate that about him.
One thing as I was growing up that really had an impact on me was just my dad, being a lover of music, always had Christian music playing in the house. Christian music and worship music. And, still to this day, I'll be doing something and, one of those old songs will come in my mind. And it is just amazing when you instill those songs in your kids years later, that they're still in there. And the one thing that I would say that, I guess I'm challenged with is, I remember just in being a kid with my dad, in the time that we would spend together, he spent time with me, but then he was also engaged in that time. Because, as a parent, as you have other things that are going on, I need to help with, put this away or help with dinner or help do this. You have all these thoughts in the back of your mind of what needs to be going on, and you can miss the moment that you're in. And so I always felt like the time that we had together, he was there with me. He was engaged. And that's something that I feel challenged with.
Something that I'm still learning from my dad, but I hope to pass it along to my children too, is to take care of the things that we work hard for, manage what we've been blessed with, and just not to take things for granted. And I remember I think about 9 years old. I would go to my dad's house over the summertime. I'd go about once every weekend, and he would assign me a chore to do, and I would go do that. And he would allot me a little bit of money, and the next week a little bit more. And I started building up a savings. Well, what do you want to buy? I said, I want to buy a gun. And I worked all summer long, and at the end of the summer, I got to go buy a shotgun. And he taught me to take care of the things that we work hard, and we have to work hard to get things sometime, and that's probably still the cleanest, best taken care of shotgun that I have out of the collection.
Excellent. Well, in order for us to continue with the other stuff that we have planned this morning, I'm going to have to cut us a little short. Would you please say thank you along with me to our panelists this morning? So you guys can go ahead and grab your seat. A couple of things just to kind of fill you in on what to expect. So we're going to watch a quick video that we've put together. I have not seen it yet, so I'm not going to make any promises, but I think it's going to be good. And then we're going to have Lieutenant Colonel Fred Bates come up. He is father of 3 boys and has been serving in our military as as his career. And so once we're done with this video, Fred will come up and kind of have a final word for us today for this Father's Day. But we want to say thank you to all of the dads here. Thank you for being here this morning, and hope you guys enjoy this.
How much does a socially awkward penguin weigh? Not enough to break the ice. don't swallow.
What do you get when you cross a monkey and a peach? You get an apricot.
Bust your teeth out. All right, so how many apples grow on an apple tree? All of them.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Where do cows go for entertainment? To the movies.
Good? They're horrible.
Okay, I'm ready now. It's in my nose now.
All right.
Okay, you do not take big gulps at all.
Big. You just have a bigger mouth than he has.
That was me.
That was funny.
All right. Come on, we need to get through this one.
Why did the snake lose his case in court? He didn't have a leg to stand on. Why did the dog quit playing football? Because it was too rough. All right, one more. What do you get when you cross a pig and a cow? A hamburger. You're silly.
All right. So why did the teddy bear say no to dessert? Because she was stuffed. Okay. Why can't you give Elsa a balloon? Because she'll let it go. Let it go. No. Okay. And what do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear.
Where did the turtle fill up his gas tank? At the Shell station.
Do you know why I don't buy any Velcro? Because it's such a ripoff. What do you call a guy with no body and no nose? Nobody knows. This isn't working. This isn't working. This isn't working. This is funny to me. I don't know why it's not funny to them.
How do all oceans say hello to each other? They wave.
I already know that kind of joke,
Alright, get you some more.
but it's pretty funny.
Get you some more.
Do you know what the father buffalo said to his boy when he dropped him off at school? Bye, son.
What do you get when you cross a cow and a rabbit? You get hair in your milk.
What do you call cheese that isn't yours? Not your cheese.
This
Alright. Haven't even started yet.
What does a cow keep in his wallet?
Mm.
Moolah. That's all I got. That's horrible. Okay.
Why did the cat get detention at school? Because he was a cheetah.
How do you keep an elephant from charging? Take away his credit card. Okay, that's
What do you call a gummy bear with no teeth? What do you call a gummy bear with no teeth? What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. Okay. All right, that's good. What do you call a gummy bear with no teeth?
Where's Gerald at? Yeah, you got to work on that. I'll help you. I'll help you a lot. So this morning I'm going to real quickly kind of talk about kind of a father's charge. And this isn't just meant to talk about for fathers, but it's meant to talk about young men, but it's also meant to talk about older gentlemen. That's a good way to say it. As my wife said to me today as I was asking her, she'll see this on video, should I wear cool looking jeans like Steven does? Or should I wear khakis? And she's like, those are old men khakis. And I'm like, what? She's like, no, those are old men khakis. And as Andrew comes up in a stupor flying in from Israel, says, yeah, Dad, they're old men khakis. You need to go shopping with Mom. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And then Tyler and Andrew, as I'm putting my glasses on this morning, are just laughing at me like crazy. So when I talk about a father's charge, I think it's very important as a father to understand the charge that's given you. And if you have a father that didn't live up to that charge, that's okay. Because we have a heavenly Father that is the only perfect Father. We're never going to get it right. We're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. My father is a man that I truly respect because he was a preacher who stood in the pulpit each week, but he practiced what he preached. The man that would stand up on a Sunday and tell people about Christ was the same man that would walk into a 7-Eleven or a convenience store, and Andrew and Tyler and David had seen this, and he talks to everybody in the store. You can't get out of there. Hey, how you doing? How's your wife? How's your kids? Hey, he tells stories, but he's genuine. Just that's the way he is. So growing up as a kid, that was important for me to see that. That was an example that I saw of my father. Now, as was said, I've got 3 boys, Andrew, Tyler, and David. I'm very proud of all 3 of them, but they're completely different, which is unique in the way that each of them is, and I have to understand that. So if you look in your bulletin, I've got a little handout that kind of has these steps. And it's Father's Day. I didn't want you to have to work, do extra work, so you don't have to fill anything out. If you didn't get one, the ushers have some extras. But the verse in there that we're going to use is from Ephesians 6:4. And it says, fathers, do not exasperate, or I wrote in there, provoke or irritate your children. Instead, bring them up in the instruction and training of the Lord. I can say that my father did that. He's not perfect. He still tends to be the devil's advocate at 73, say things that make us all want to go, Dad, really? Really did you have to say that? But he was a father that truly was a man that did that and gave me the example of that, of growing up and then having children of my own and working with youth over the years. As was said, I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Kentucky Army National Guard, and I recently took command of a unit. And one of the things that we do is we write what's called our command philosophy. And the first thing on my command philosophy is integrity of my soldiers. And I expect integrity to be the most important thing that they adhere to because it ties back to everything else that I expect of them as soldiers. They have integrity in what they do, their relationships, and how we teach. We're a training school. How we teach other soldiers, then all the other Army values and everything else we will do will top out. So for me, as a father, I think the most important thing, the charge number 1, is to ask for forgiveness from your children. Because it truly can be said that we, as fathers, are not perfect. We as men are not perfect. And if you haven't figured it out, your children already have. And if you're married, I guarantee you your wife has already figured it out. And if you're not married, I guarantee you if you ask any young lady, they'll be like, oh yeah, you're not perfect. And then they'll tell you how they are. So I think in our house, the way that we always kind of remember it is, Beth's not in here, she's in the nursery, but as she reminds us that us as men in her house are not perfect, and if we would just do it her way, it would just be so much easier. It would just be simpler. So as a father, you have to understand that you have to seek forgiveness. You're going to make mistakes. That's something I was taught at a very young age, and I, on a regular basis, have to ask my boys to forgive me. And that may be times where I've disciplined them, but I've gone too far. And there's a point where, as a father, where there's a difference between disciplining and you hurt the spirit of your child. And you have to ask that child for forgiveness. You have to. Because if Christ forgave us, well, how are we going to do any less? Now, if you were raised in a home as a young man or as an older man and you had a father that didn't get that, I'm sorry, I can't change it. There's only one person that can change that at this point, and that's Jesus Christ through his Father. But today I want to challenge you, whether that father of yours is alive or dead, and whether they're willing to accept it or not, you need to give them forgiveness. You've got to, because Christ forgave you. He died on the cross for you and me. So take the opportunity this Father's Day to forgive them, whether they're alive or not. Ask your kids for forgiveness when you mess up, because you're going to. It's okay. You're going to do it, and learn from it. The second charge that I have for you today is to pray over your children, because I guarantee you, whether you realize it or not, there's someone that's prayed over you. Somewhere in your life, there's someone that prayed for you about you being here, about you finding Christ, about you being in this service today. Somebody at some point prayed about it. I find that I'll be driving around places and God will point out people to me in cars and say, pray for that person. I have no idea what I'm praying for them for. Oh, dear Lord, please let them drive safer because she's so great. No, that's not the prayer that he expects. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. But God shows you people to pray for. And I guarantee you, if he does that to me, he's doing that to millions of people. Someone prayed for you at some point. So you need to pray over your children. And you need to understand that at some point in your children's life, they're going to grow up, and you, whether you're ready for it or not, have to let them become adults and make mistakes. And you can't control everything about their lives. They might go to the wrong school, they might pick the wrong this, that's okay. But you can pray over everything. You can pray for them to make the right decisions. Does that mean they're always going to make the right decision? Nope. Might be the right decision for them, but it's just not the right decision for you. It's not your life, it's their life. I had a friend one time that I was talking to about that, and I said, there's a point in their life where your children, you've raised them the right way, you've brought them up the way that you did the best that you could, whether you're a Christian or not, and you have to turn your children over to God and say, all I can do now at this point is pray for you. And I can pray for, if they're not married yet, you can pray for their future spouse. I find myself doing that a lot for my boys. I pray for them. I pray for their families. I pray that they will find the right woman of who God wants them to find. I pray for their jobs. I pray for the friends. I pray for my grandchildren that I don't even know about, that I haven't even met, haven't even imagined yet. Because that's your opportunity to petition God on their behalf, to pray a covering over them, to pray blessings over them, and to pray for God to give you the wisdom how to interact with them. My two older boys, who are much different, are kind of one subset. David is David. And I am finding myself, and it's harder, and David and I talk about it, it is harder for me with David than it was with the first two. I have to ask forgiveness of David more often than I did of Andrew and Tyler. At least I think I do. I have to pray over David more because David and I are not the same people. We like different things. We do different things. But that's okay. We look at things differently. But that's where God's pushed me. My father, who is 73 now, is much older, can't do quite as much as he used to. He's had some health issues. But whenever I talk to him or talk to people about him, one of the things he spends a lot of time doing is praying for other people. Tyler was mentioned a couple weeks ago by Larry about Tyler winning that race. And when I called my dad that day to tell him about Tyler, where he was at in the race, about halfway through the marathon, my dad specifically said he wasn't praying for Tyler to win the race. He said, I'm praying that God will use this race to glorify him. And I was like, you know what? I couldn't have prayed anything better, because we've said many times to Tyler, you know, if it's about God and about God getting the glory, then I pray you do well. But if it ever becomes about you, I hope you crash and burn every race you run, because that's what I want to see. And I see that my Father doing that, and my Father does that on a regular basis for people that he knows. So even if you don't have a relationship with your Father, or he's passed away, or you don't have children of your own, or weren't blessed with your own, find, as was said earlier, find young men or women that you can pray for. They're there. There's young men and women in this church. Ask Jeremy or Andrew or Pastor Riley or Beth for a list of the youth that are in our church that you don't see on Sundays but come on Wednesday nights. Ask for a list of them. Put them next to your Bible. Pray, because maybe you're the person that's supposed to pray over that young man or young woman every day. Maybe they don't have somebody in a house that's praying for them. Maybe that's you. Maybe God's called you to that. Do that. We have to raise our children as the Lord instructs, then they're God's responsibility. When it gets to that point where you can pray over them as they grow older, God's really the one that's going to protect them. God's the one that's going to see them and guide them back to him if they've walked away. But God's the one that's taken that responsibility and says, you did what I asked. Now it's my turn. I got this. I think he can handle it. I think he can handle it. If the worship team would start working their way up here, I'm going to talk about my third charge and a couple other things. The third charge I have for you is be purposeful in your relationship with your children, or even your grandchildren. Or if you don't have children, be purposeful with other young men and women. Spend that time to talk to them on a Sunday morning. Or that kid that's sitting there checking out your groceries at Walmart or Kroger. Spend an extra 2 minutes. The person behind you, they'll get over it. They'll be okay if you spend an extra minute asking that young man or woman how their week's going. You might be the only person that asked them that week. You might be the only person that seems to actually care about them and what they're going through. As I said before, David and I are a little different. David likes to do things a little different. He likes to play some video games that I don't, so I have to find myself with David sometimes being more purposeful and learning to play games where I know he's going to beat the living daylights out of me, and there's no glory and all the military strategy that's rattling my head because David's like, oh, you're dead. Wasn't that fun, Dad? That's great. Wait. We were playing a Star Wars Galactic Battle game, and he's playing as the Consortium last night, and it didn't matter how many cruisers I built as the Rebels. He just went, I was like, what is this? He's like, well, you know, there's no strategy. You're cheating. No, I'm not cheating. I just destroyed you again. Let's play again. But that kind of ties to something that is a draw for him, even if it's not for me. So be purposeful with your children. Be purposeful with other people. Just as God seeks us through his Son, Jesus Christ, they may not accept it, but that's okay. The other thing that ties to that is quality time over quantity time. You don't always have the time to spend with your kids as much as you want, but find ways to make it quality time. I'm gone during the week, western part of the state. I have to find things to do that David likes. I challenge you as men, and people ask me all the time, hey, sir, do you golf? I don't golf because I don't have time, but also because my children have not decided that they wanted to play golf. I follow running because my son is an avid runner. I follow video games because my son is avid about history and video games. I follow stuff about Andrew, about technical stuff that makes my head explode, but that's okay because that's his passion. I think in this world today, if more fathers would spend less time watching football if they have a son or daughter that doesn't give a rip about it, doesn't care about it, and find ways to interact with their children, we'd see a lot more difference in this world today. We really would. So as fathers, we've got to do that, because I can tell you that you've got to figure out where your identity and worth's going to come from. It's not going to come from your job. It's not going to come from what you get done and the things you think. It's going to come from that legacy that you leave of that next generation. My boys, I hope they see that of my father. I see that of my grandfather, who was the first in our family to accept Christ. in a crisis moment when my father fell out of a Studebaker in 1946, 47 and almost died. And the Navy doctors left him to die and said, there's nothing we can do. And my grandfather said, Lord, if you will save my son, I'll serve you the rest of my life. And he honored it. And God blessed our family because every generation past that has served. And if you didn't have that, you didn't grow up with that, this is your opportunity to be that generation that says, you know what? I'm going to be the one that stands and makes a stand for Christ. I'm going to live for my children. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to give a legacy that's more important than the job and the places where I work. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the military, soon to be a colonel, commander over, yeah, whatever. It doesn't make a difference if I'm not leaving a legacy to my children. If they're not someday raising kids and families and making it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So the last verse I'll leave you with today is Colossians 3:21. It says, do not discourage your children or they will become discouraged. Find ways to encourage your children. Find ways, even when you don't agree with them, you don't like their decisions, they're running from the Lord, they're doing their own thing. Find ways to encourage them. Find ways to lift them up. Pray for them. If you've done something wrong in front of them, because we all have, ask for forgiveness. And if your father or mother wronged you, forgive them. Christ forgave us. That's the charge today on Father's Day I want you to remember as you leave here. If I could, I'd like all men 18 years old and above to please stand at this time. I'm going to give a blessing over you today, and I'd like everybody that's around them either reach out or touch. I want every one of these men to be touched by someone or reached out. If somebody would come over on this side, Victoria can cover all of them. I just want to say a blessing over you, wherever you're at in your life, about God will use you as a man. Or to be the father, maybe to a father that's not out, a kid that doesn't have one. Lord, I pray a blessing today over each man, young man that's here today. Whether they're someday to be a father, or maybe they'll never be a father, or they'll just be a father to someone that doesn't have a father. Or if they've been a father, Lord, I pray a blessing over them, over their house. May they ask for forgiveness when they need to. May they live with a purpose that's a legacy. And I pray that you would give them people and children and young men and women and grandchildren to pray for every single day. Use them at whatever stage they are in their life, Lord, in Jesus' name, to make a difference in this world. Thank you for them being here today, and I just pray a blessing from a holy and loving God that cares for each and every person here. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you're here today and you have not accepted Christ into your heart, today's the day to do it. Today's to do it. There's a loving Father that cares about you and wants to guide you in your life. There's people that'll be up here that'll pray with you about that. I'll stay up here and pray with you about that. Or you just want to pray about something about a father, I'll pray with you or others. But also, if there's anything you want prayer for today, come up and ask for that. Thank you for being here today. Have a blessed Father's Day.